I'm Geoff Eido. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. Ow!
Ow!
That's good.
Ow!
That's good. I'm impressed.
I do a good
That's
wolf.
You're a very good
dog.
she-wolf.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Very excellent.
Ancestors, I'm sure.
Yeah, good. Exactly.
Yeah.
We're all sitting around a fire together.
Yeah.
My Lunacy is a Luminary podcast. My luminary guest today is my dear friend, Aubrey Morgan Yee. My guest today is my dear friend, Aubrey Morgan Yee.
Yes, that is me.
She is an author. She's a podcast host. She's a futurist. She's a really incredible human being. She's a dear friend of mine. We went to Egypt together, which I'm sure we'll probably touch on a little bit.
Absolutely must.
That was amazing.
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, she's here to talk about her new book, which is really incredible. It's just such a beautiful book. It's called Our Beloved Futures, and it's available anywhere that you get books.
Yes.
It's well worth your time. It's a really inspiring and awakening manual for really how to navigate the insanity that we're dealing with right now in the world.
Yep.
It's really a triumph, and I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
And I'm really happy to have you on the program talking about this book.
Thank you so much. It's interesting. Like since I wrote it, it becomes more relevant almost every day.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's why it's coming right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I do want to get into this. Like, I try to just be eternally optimistic about everything. And they've been saying the world's going to end for thousands of years. You know, every generation thinks it's really going to end, and it's really going to end. It's really going to end. And then it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And same now, but it is getting weirder. And the informational power, the actual power that people have in the world is at an all-time high. We're in a different sphere, and I'm sure we'll get into that as well.
Yeah, the destructive capacities are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could nuke the whole planet.
Sure.
I don't know, hundreds of times over, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is really like about that and how to navigate that. The first question I want to ask you is like, what inspired this book? Like what had you, because it's one thing to have beautiful thoughts, and then it's another thing to like just be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write this sucker, and I'm going to get it done. So what was the moment for that? How did that come to pass?
Yeah, it wasn't a moment at all. In many ways, this book is kind of an amalgamation of many paths I've taken in life. But, I did my doctorate degree, finished in 2019 in alternative futures, indigenous politics. And I thought I would turn my dissertation into a book. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll turn dissertation into a book. Then the pandemic hits and that kind of gets sidelined. Fast forward to, I think it was 2023. And I was just really feeling this desire to write. And I had found this amazing teacher that I was studying with, and she had a writing like cohort that she was going to start, and something in it just really resonated. And I still didn't know exactly what book I was going to write, but I knew she was the right channel to write with. So I started in that. And at first I thought, okay, I'm a poet. I've been a poet my whole life. I had this idea, I'd just gather all the poetry I'd been writing my whole life and make a poetry book. So I started doing that a little bit in this writing cohort. And then all this other stuff started flooding through. And the title came later, so maybe I'll get to that in a minute, because it wasn't called Our Beloved Futures till the very end. But it was almost like my life had prepared this trail of information that I wasn't sure how I could put together in one piece. And through that experience, she does a very kind of sacred sort of meandering style of writing and like holding you in the writing container. So it allowed for these transmissions to come through that were sort of patchworked, and I didn't know how they'd start to architect. And then we work with the architecture of the book, and that all flowed through around the chakra system and all these other things, and the butterfly metaphor and that sort of thing. So really, it's like the book made itself in a way, like from the ethers, it feels like. And it was this piece that I couldn't have written without everything I'd done in my life to date. All of those pieces had to be in place. And then the sacred space over the time of it was about a year of writing, solid writing, and then editing and things like that for another year. that it was allowed to come through. And it was really about opening my channel to receive the information. Because sometimes I'd write and I'd go back and read it and I'm like, did I write that? Like I couldn't even actually remember writing those words, but they had come through me. So there was a way in which my vessel was prepared to receive the transmission that came through in this book that was meant to be here at this time. It's sort of how it feels to me.
Cool.
Yeah. So it wasn't like, I'm going to write a book and so that's where it was also an interesting process because it's not a straightforward book. It's got sort of a mystical aspect to it. It's a little bit nonlinear, that sort of way of reading and writing. It's almost like a book you could just open. I was talking to our dear friend Isis, who does, the Oracle Arts work, and she's calling it bibliomancy, where it's a way you could just like flip to the page and see what wants to come through on that page for you in that day. Feels like that kind of a book too. So you don't have to read it cover to cover. You could just be like, what do I need to hear today? And you open it up and read a paragraph. So yeah, it's a little bit different in that way.
Who was your teacher?
Her name's Elena.
Okay.
She's based in the UK and she does a lot of work with the elementals and the elven realms, basically, but not from you can tease me now.
Okay. She works with elves, everybody. So, she's was she
really
in that Peter
energies.
Jackson movie?
No,
Did Lord of the Rings?
She's really into Lord of the Rings.
Okay,
for sure.
I bet she is.
Because you know that the cosmology
and,
that he wrote and sort of like all the research he did around those characters. So it's about a different level of consciousness. Like if you think about these past civilizations, people talk about like Atlantis and Lemuria and all these kinds of things, whether or not you believe in those, there's a certain consciousness that comes from the elemental realms, which is really nature. So it's tapping into that, but she's a shaman. She's, she does a lot of shamanic journeys. And so we do things like sitting in the writing class and she'll do like a meditation with a drum and help you see your characters come through if you're doing fiction, or like the storyline come through if you're doing nonfiction or whatever it might be. But it was more of a nonlinear process. It wasn't like write this chapter and then that chapter. It was like visioning the architecture of the book almost as like a piece, whether it's a tree, or for me, it was the chakra system or whatever it might be. And then piecing the parts of the book into that architecture. So it was a very, shamanic, non-linear writing process that really resonated for me with this book. Yeah.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah. Which is very different than a dissertation. So it's like Elena.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to get into that.
Yeah.
Call her up.
Very cool.
I could take it and then I could make fun of it at the same time.
Exactly. She would love that.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Amazing. So that's great.
And I think just something on that too, because I liked how we went there so quickly. What was really interesting for me to observe in myself in writing this book was the coming together of two very distinct worlds that are within me that feel like they don't go together, which is sort of this like spiritual shamanic side. And then this very academic political science, like critique of society, understanding of like, systems and all this stuff coming together in one space. And then woven with poetry. Like I was like, how is that even going to work? But that's what happened. So
yeah, it's really beautiful to read. And there's something very refreshing about that. Cause you get into some specifics and details about what we're going through and kind of how systems are dissolving, and we can witness that and look at think tanks and weird things that are happening that are actually happening.
Totally.
And then also like this sort of very inspired poetry, which, it's a really refreshing read.
Thank you.
So I also had this curiosity about like, did you feel as though you were channeling the book?
Not exactly, but something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where you can decide if you believe in that stuff or not. But when you've built a life around learning, it's almost like there's so much packed in here that it comes through in that way, whether it's, coming from outside in or however you want to think about it. It definitely felt like something else was coming through that wasn't logical or through the mind only.
Yeah.
So
it's very interesting to me because it sort of feels like that. And then also like I have, when I say the word channeling, I get a little vomit in the back of my throat.
Totally. You're like, really? Yeah.
My Omaha upbringing is like,
totally.
Shut
Come
up.
on.
Okay. With the channeling. And yet like as a songwriter and
creative
entertainer, creative writer myself, like I do find myself in certain states, that are hypnotic where I'm like, okay, this is coming through really easily and it's flowing really well. And to me, that's sort of what that's about. It's not like
that's what it felt like.
I'm channeling the spirit of Martin Luther King.
Exactly.
While I'm
totally.
doing the thing.
Yeah.
Go Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
I wish I could channel that guy. But
Totally.
like, it's more of like, to me, it's more of a coming from a space of inspiration, which is inspiration comes from in spirit, coming from like a divine place, which is like divine actually means whole.
Yeah.
WHOLE.
Yes.
And so that means coming from a whole place. If I see myself as whole, complete, and perfect right now in this moment, which is really how we are.
Yes. All the time.
I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Which we do. I mean, I don't believe that all the time. Most of the time I don't believe that. But truth be told. But when I get myself into that space and I see myself from that perspective, then it's a lot easier for me to create and write from an authentic, real place that's like vulnerable.
Yeah. And a lot of what I speak about in the book and wholly believe is that we are in an alive, animate universe. That means everything is alive and animate, not just the things we like give the, say are alive or life, that it's all alive and interacting with us. And so if we, stop thinking that our senses somehow see everything, this is just a particular technology that we're in that has eyes and a nose and a mouth that can do certain things, but there's a whole other reality that's going on that we can't perceive. So if you can understand that, and that's a very scientific perspective or a spiritual perspective, you go both ways. But if you agree with that, then it's like, okay, there's other things that are influencing me that I can't understand.
Yeah.
So whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
That's what was
there's
happening.
plenty of things that are going on. You wouldn't be able to listen to this podcast if there weren't energies flowing throughout the universe that we can't
magic.
see.
Exactly. Yeah. The fact that these phones can film me and we can send this around the globe is magic.
Yeah, it really is. So there are things that we can identify and be like, okay, we can send cellular signals and radio signals and stuff like that and Wi-Fi. Yeah. And then there's a bunch of stuff that we haven't figured out how to use.
The great mystery. Yeah.
In the great mystery. And also, this desk here is a desk and it's not talking to me, but there is an energy about it. And there are molecules that are vibrating in it at all times to keep it composite in the way that it is, that are also degrading at a very slow rate. So there is actually a living quality to it. Totally. Not to mention the fact that it's made from wood, which came from a tree.
Yes. And you have a relationship to it.
Yeah. And
whatever that looks like.
I really love Josh Schrey. Do you know that podcast, The Emerald?
Okay. Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay. He's going to come on the
Amazing.
show in September.
Cool.
Actually.
Incredible. Does he live in the area? No.
No, I feel like he's in Hawaii. I might be wrong.
He does really great work. Yeah.
But anyway, I love his stuff. And, he talks a lot about animacy and he's an animist.
Yes.
And he just talks about how, look, 300 years ago and before that, pretty much everybody thought everything was alive anyway.
Yes. It's a very new phenomenon to believe the way that we do.
Right. There's a certain level of arrogance to think that it's not, and also that you ought not treat objects as if they are alive. Like treat them with respect.
Exactly.
It's like my guitar, right?
Yeah.
I love my guitar.
I'm sure you have a total relationship.
When I finish, I kiss my guitar.
Yes.
People might think that's weird. I don't care. Like she has a name.
Yeah.
Like
it's a lot more fun to live in an animate universe. It's
really
much more
is.
interesting for sure.
It's much more interesting. Yeah. And there's been recent studies about if you're thinking, they've been able to measure plant frequencies.
Yes.
Like some dude hooked up a lie detector to plants. Have you heard about this guy?
No, but I've heard about plants when you're with medicine. Like if you're going to collect plants and you have the intention that you're going to use them for medicine and you send that intention out, they've measured that the plants release more of the medicinal properties that they hold within them because they know they're going to be collected for medicine.
Interesting.
Which is pretty wild.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this fella whose name I can't recall that my wife was telling me about, who put a lie detector up to plants somehow and measured how if he's thinking, I'm going to cut the plant or whatever, it spikes off the roof. Like there's a direct connection
totally
between the thoughts and what the plant is experiencing. And there's all kinds of, you play certain music for the plant. They love Beethoven, you know, but if you play Slipknot, they're going to die,
well, they've been on the planet a lot
you guys
longer.
Have your place.
A lot longer than we have.
Right.
So of course they have some sort of a consciousness. We just can't fully connect with it in the way we connect with humans, but it doesn't mean it's not there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's great. So I'm glad that we've got that.
Yes. We've got a foundation from which to build.
I don't know how we even got to that topic, people, but we went there. So
yes,
there it is.
Mm-hmm.
I really like to talk about so much of your book is really like it's kind of dedicated to people navigating a world that is in the midst of collapse.
Yes.
And it also feels like it's not just a book written to people now who are struggling with that, but also people in the future that they can read and be like, oh, okay, somebody saw that this was going to go down.
Totally.
Even if you don't, like, I'm very skeptical on whether or not it's all going to collapse. I think we're going to just figure it out like we always do.
Well, we could, and that'd be great.
But I also do believe that in order for us to do that, there does have to be an elevation of consciousness in terms of valuing the earth and the resources that we have and protecting them the right way, in a 100%. Real way. I'm not, it's like I'm a libertarian in my mind, and then practically speaking, no, you have to we have to set boundaries until people get the value behind why the boundary exists, so that we preserve this incredible place that we live in. So
it's something that just feels really called to share as you say that is I think we've already been in collapse for a long time. Just you and I live in what I call in the book a fragile peace or privileged peace. Because the majority of the world is living in what we would consider collapse-like conditions.
Okay.
So
let's get into that.
So basically,
specifically,
for example, the floods just happened in Hawaii, and I'm scrolling through my screen, and I'm seeing kids in the Congo, gold mining. It's like we've got a billion, however many billion people on the planet that live for $1 a day or less.
Right.
The amount of hunger, people living in refugee camps. Like there's a whole host of collapse-like apocalyptic systems that people are persisting in. It's just not us yet. And so there's this interesting moment where the sort of Western way of life, which is built upon the oppression of the multitude to exist, like for our capacity to consume as much as we do and live the way that we do, the way the system's set up. I'm not saying it has to be this way. Part of what I'm saying is there is another way to do it where we can all, be in the abundance of what's available. But the way it's set up, we have to, factory systems, all this stuff, industrial civilization is set on the ability to, have a whole working class. And this where AI is a really interesting conversation we could get into. But, so it's a fragile peace because it feels like peace, but it has to be defended by war.
Right.
So peace that has to be defended by war isn't actually peace. It's something else.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm really saying is that we've been in collapse, but now it's coming for the rest of us. And that may or may not happen. We may find a way out of it. We may innovate our way. We may have the radical remission from the stage 4 cancer, and suddenly we're healthy and this whole new world comes through. I hope that's what happens.
Maybe AI saves us instead of
it absolutely could.
I think it could.
It's possible. There's two possibilities there. And one is, sort of what we call an e-utopia in futures. It's not like perfect, meaning there's nothing wrong, but it's the best possible place we could create. Versus the dystopia. It's possible with that. My mentor in futures used to always say, full unemployment is the goal. And we'd be like, what? And he's like, because this is, in the early 2000s, we were talking about AI in those classes. And he's like, it's coming, it's going to happen. And he's like, and when that happens, if it's used correctly, we could all be, surfing, swimming, painting, hanging with our kids, like not having to do the work that we do.
Yeah.
The problem is the systems are set up to exploit, to create hoarding, to have these sort of patterns of domination. And so what we're seeing is, the hands of a few are using AI to reap billions of dollars rather than spread the money around and create more prosperity for all, right? So there's like a deeper sort of operating system that we have to really kind of get to and shift. And then all of these beautiful things could be possible. But without that shift in the operating system and sort of the deeply held myth of what it's like to be human on Earth, I don't think we're going to get there. And part of what I'm inviting people into is remember how amazing we each are. And then when we all start to move in that direction and see the joy and beauty in connection and connection to Earth, I really think something different is going to happen. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a couple of things there for me. One, you can see the collapse happening. The middle class is disappearing. The rich are getting richer. The poor are getting poorer. Things are expensive, and they're getting more expensive. It is way harder for
very much
friends of mine that like have a day-to-day existence. And also because of AI in some ways, it just things are getting more expensive. It's harder to raise a child. It's harder it's because that gap is getting bigger instead of getting smaller. We don't have that 1950s mentality.
Yeah. And that was such a short window of time. And
it was
really
very
the systems are set up to do what they're doing right now.
That's right. And then the other thing is that, to embrace that way of being, that way of awakening, and to embrace more of an abundance mentality, you really do have to cut through such thick layers of delusion
Totally.
and bullshit and fear, frankly,
100%.
which is really what we're being sold.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like I look at it and I think, okay, well, yes, there are those people that are in positions of power. You know, we just watched the Rupert family drama documentary.
What is
on
it?
Netflix. Rupert Murdoch.
Oh, okay. Oh, I haven't heard about this one.
It's so terribly enlightening about him and his family.
Sure.
And it's sad. It's really sad, but also like just looking at how him grappling for power and then, you know, letting go of actually, you know, testing to make sure that what he's saying is true and making it so opinion based. Even though he's serving an audience that does need a voice, it'd be nice if that voice was like always consistently real
Sure.
and not damaging other people. And like one of his sons wanted to do that and he didn't do it. He wasn't able to do it.
I'll have to watch
Rupert
this.
did not want to let
It'd
him
be
do
a good plane movie.
It is. But so like, I bring that up because there are people like that, and the hunger for power and greed itself just gets more, monstrous. You know, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. You know, if you get to the top like that, you're going to be super corrupt because we live in a system based on scarcity and fear.
Yes.
And fear sells.
Yeah.
Love doesn't sell.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Well, that's because those systems are all woven together in this, like I said, this deeply held like
fear,
myth.
Greed. There's not enough. Even though we live in a place, you know, Charles Eisenstein was on the show too.
Oh, cool.
So I'm sure you know him and read his book and stuff like that. And you talk about inner being, and you know, both of you actually really paint a picture of, you know, that the field of abundance in which we actually live, and just remembering to come back to that, recognize our inner being.
Yes.
And yet, in order to do that, you have to let go of the addiction to fear.
Yes.
And I was thinking this morning while I was in the shower, considering what we're doing in the podcast, why is it that fear sells so hard? And to me, you know, there's like, it's mesmerizing. You know, your amygdala gets hijacked, and then now you're in fight or flight, which is kind of has its own allure, and you're just stuck watching the TV or reading the newspaper, and you can't move, and you feel like you're stuck, and you have to believe this lie, or this maybe thing that's true, but it's spun in a way to make you more afraid so that they can get your eyeballs to watch it.
Yeah.
And it's also on the other side of the world, not affecting you in the slightest.
Totally. But that's also the systems at play, right? Because when we're afraid and we're toxified, which is the other part of that, like sort of that they go together. Right. The toxification of our world, our food, our thoughts, our everything, paired with this constant fear state. Yeah. Really easy to control.
So then like the question becomes for me is like, well, how do we inspire those people?
Those people,
that are
meaning
among
people
us,
in
those people
charge.
that are in power.
Yeah.
Number one, how do we inspire those people that are in charge to see a love-based operating system?
I think they have to experience it.
Yes.
They have to experience it on a somatic level. And that's where one of my hopes around something like plant medicines or other like really transformative experiences, meditation retreats can do this sometimes too, but like those really like, not just like, let's go on a little retreat and have a good time, but like the ones where you get down in the muck and you're like purging all the stuff. Like I did the Hoffman process would be another one. Things where people really get into it. One. Yeah. It's like that. I have hope where that's creating change that's meaningful because people are having, I call it the shift within. I think, I can't remember if I speak about it in the book or it's come through after, but this idea that we're so entranced in what I call modern mind, right? It starts from birth and we're just acculturated in the Western dominant culture, acculturated into this modern mind, modern way of thinking of like what success looks like, what, you know, family is supposed to look like, all the things. And we've got to shift from within back to an ecological mind or an indigenous mind. You could think about it a couple different ways, but that embraces that abundance mentality, embraces the idea that everything is alive, really understands the nourishment that comes from relationship, like true meaningful relationship with self and other and the more than human world. Because once you have that kind of like richness in your life, the other stuff feels a little emptier. Like you still might want things and have like a, you know, material desires and all of that, but it doesn't hold you the same way. Whereas if you start to, and what you see in the systems we have is to get to the top, of a lot of these systems, you have to be cutthroat, you have to be pretty aggressive, you have to be really competitive,
Yes.
which severs a lot of relational tissue
Roy
and
Cohn.
tie, right? So you end up severing a lot of relationships. You have, relationships in family, relationships in your community, you become very isolated. And from that place, the only thing that you feel like can fill the gaping hole is more stuff, more money, more power, more prestige. Whereas if you've got this like richness of relationship and relationship to earth, and all the other things that are around you, you just don't want that as much. Like you're not interested.
Yeah.
So it's like that's like the antidote, I think, at the end of the day, if we can get people to go there. And you need a transformative experience to really do that if you're already at that level where you've been in the system, really playing the game for a long time.
Yeah. Brent Pella is a comedian who I love, who came on the program, and he does a lot of spoofs of like the spiritual community and whatnot. He's great. But he also, I went to one of his shows, and we went to one of his shows, and he was selling these signs that say psychedelics for politicians.
Nice. Yeah, totally.
Which I have in my garage.
Hey, let's give it a shot. It might work. You never know. Hey, it's like, I'm down for trying anything.
I'm into that. And then, you mentioned the indigenous mentality, just to be clear, because I think that people think, well, it's a lot of, what do you call that? Cultural appropriation.
And that happens 100%.
Which, fine. Okay, whatever. I get it. I'm not going to start wearing a headdress. But unless it's given to me by somebody in a sacred
ceremonially,
way, and
exactly.
Then maybe I would wear it in a ceremonial way and not to the fucking supermarket. But although that's a funny gag right there. That's what I should start doing. But, to be clear, we all came from indigenous roots.
100%.
And if you look at the mentality of indigenous people, it's very much, respecting the earth, having reverence for life, exploring the mystery of life, really loving yourself first.
That is in all of us.
Yeah. And that's in all of us, and not being attached to a religion, just being attached to, we're here because of God, because of Creator, like just exploring your own way. Like that's really that mentality across tribes. So many different tribes have different versions of that. And we have that ourselves. And so like when you speak of like embracing more of an indigenous perspective, that's what we're talking about.
That's why sometimes I call it ecological mind as well. Cause it's sort of like what's going to resonate with a different audience, but it's that getting back to the root of what I think it is to be truly human. Yeah. And I think all this other stuff that's layered on top of us is distortion after distortion, toxicity, and all the delusions. That when we pare that back, it's like, this is who we always were underneath that. Yeah. It's how we're born. It's how we come into the earth, I believe, as a newborn baby, unless we carry some karmic stuff from our past life, which can happen. Yeah. But
we could get into that too. Yeah. But and so then the second question that I was going to ask is, aside from how do we get people who are empowered, that was number one, to transform. To shift. And then two, how do we get people who are in alignment with interbeing and come from an abundance perspective as much as possible? How do we get those folks in power?
So I think this is a question about what you mean by power.
And political power.
Well, I think like even the idea of power, right? So I think part of the shift is shifting our understanding of what power is.
Okay. Break it down.
So I think like in the current dominant culture, power is power over. Mm-hmm. So you have power when you have power over people that you can wield at your will, right? So it's like an individual being wielding power at their will. We hope they have good intentions. We hope they're smart. We hope they know what they're doing. Otherwise, they're going to mess things up. Mm-hmm. The kind of power that I think is coming when all of the amazing things we know will happen is a different kind of power with. My friend calls it a withness. So it's like we become with each other and there's not the need to dominate. It's actually like a respectful power that sees that we're part of a larger organism called humanity, even actually called Earth, in which we play a part. And we don't need to necessarily stand out in the same way that the power over paradigm encourages us to. So I think actually the systems will be very different and look very different. And so there still will be people doing different functions, but the power over won't be the same, held in the same way. It's more of a power with, and it becomes a more decentralized, less hierarchical, matriarchal is the new kind of hot term, like matriarchal societies. That might be one of the ways we go. I think that's a really interesting model to look at. But I think that understanding of and desire for power in that way that we know it now, if we're to make it, will disappear.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
That's great.
yeah.
So I want to get into, how do people access that for themselves? Like how do we, walk through daily life? I want to talk about that, but putting a pin in that, take us down the futures look. Like, well, what do these systems look like? Are we going to the polls and voting? Are we like what are these different systems look like?
Well, I haven't designed them all yet.
Okay.
I'm back to you next week, but I think again, thinking
hurry up.
Exactly.
All right? We're running out of time.
Actually, one of the things I'm thinking about is starting to write more like in my Substack about these different things and pulling them apart. Cause like I've dove in deeply, obviously into the education system because I have kids. So I could like speak about that maybe.
No, it's great.
That might be
You didn't send them to normal schools?
No, but I would have actually if the pandemic hadn't hit because I was entranced and programmed to believe that that's how you get to what we call success, right?
Interesting.
So, and I had inklings of discontent, and it felt strange to me that I would drop my children off at 7:45 a.m. and pick them up at sometimes 4:45 p.m., rush home, cook dinner, stress out, get them to sleep, wake up the next morning, stress to get them out the door and do it again. And they're like 5 years old.
Yeah.
It's very strange. And yes, I think I trust these people, but I've never really spent much time with them. Right. So hopefully they're doing a good job. The school has really great marketing materials.
Yeah.
So, we went to a private school. So we'd done our due diligence and like looked at all of them and picked a progressive school and all the things. And something just didn't feel right. And so I had this vision. I was like, so you mind if we talk about education? Because I think that's a good one.
This is one of the systems of the future that we're talking about.
Yeah,
so you're answering my question.
Is perfect. So, the pandemic hits and we end up at home with the kids. And I suddenly realized, and I had been thinking about this for a while, that I wanted to homeschool them at some point, maybe travel the world, but it was going to be a little later. We end up at home with them. Tao was 5, Samira was 8, or 6 and 8, something like that. So kindergarten and second grade. So still pretty young. And we're at home and we're, getting the curriculum sent to us. And I'm looking at this curriculum and I'm like, what? This is what they do all day? I'm like, we can get through this in 45 minutes. And then I really thought about it and I was like, oh, I get it. The whole day isn't about learning. It's about schooling. And they're very different. Learning is learning. We do it all the time. We do it as we're like walking around the world. We do it when we travel. We do it with our families. We're learning all the time. We do it more focused when we read books or study or whatever. Schooling is an acculturation process. We're creating culture through schools. So what do you do all day? You show up at the school, you go and you pledge allegiance. So now you're acculturating to a certain nationality. You stand in certain rows. You face the front. There's a teacher at front that looks at you and tells you what's happening. Then you go line up to get ready for the bell to ring to tell you to go into the room. So you're following orders. You're standing in line. There's a certain like acculturation that's happening there around authority and who's in charge. Then you sit in a certain way in a classroom. Luckily, our classroom was, a little bit more like dynamic and they had tables. A lot of schools, you're sitting at a desk all facing the front. All of these things are designed to create a certain understanding of your place in culture, how you relate to power, how you relate to your peers. The fact that kids are all in like a certain age group is kind of strange. Like life is never like that. Like so many.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And so there's a lot of these ways. And then I was like, as a futurist, I'm like, oh, well, let's explore the history of public education. So I started looking into where it came from. And it came, around the turn of the century, 1800s to 1900s, when in Boston, I think it was particularly, there was a lot of immigrants on the streets who weren't, going to the private schools. And so they were kind of running wild and all this stuff. And at the same time, the industrial civilization was kind of coming about. So factories were coming into play. And, some folks were like, well, this is a great idea. And it was coming, I think, in some ways from a good place. We look back and we can sort of judge it. But I do believe they thought it was a good thing that they saw these immigrants their children didn't have a future. And they're like, well, let's make these schools so we can train them to be really good workers for our factories.
Right.
It'll be great. So they set it up as a training place for factory workers. And if you look at the average public school, that's what it's built like. The actual shape of the building, the way the desks are set up, all the things. At that same time, a couple of thinkers, John Dewey, Maria Montessori, and Steiner, were both like all looking at this happening as philosophers and big thinkers. And they're like, this is going to destroy democracy. We're going to have a bunch of people who don't know how to think critically. So they created alternative education paradigms, the Waldorf school, the Montessori school, and progressive education. So that all came out of that. So once I understood that, I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's part of why we picked a progressive school. But then once I had the kids at home and I realized there's a whole world of experience that I can offer them. And I actually like my kids and I kind of want to spend time with them. And I was like, and then I realized like how weird it is that we force kids to wake up with a bell and an alarm in the morning.
Yeah.
And they have to get out of bed and do all these things. And like all of that isn't really good for their health. So it's like the whole thing shifted for me. And I was like, actually, I think I just want to do this for a while. So we went into like a 5-year now homeschooling journey, almost 6 years, and it's been incredible. And I've watched them flourish in that experience. And we've done all different kinds of things where we've done co-ops and we've done, like had a teacher come in. Sometimes I'm the teacher, very fluid, gone around the world, like studied, Spanish in Ecuador. And we're very privileged. We can do all of this. And I've seen other people who don't have the same level of privilege doing similar things. But I just think in general, that's like the new kind of system, multi-generational world, sort of community-based schooling where you're learning from elders, you're learning from parents, you're in multi-age environments, like Tao, who we love, my son. It's like he can lead little kids, like Orion, he's 12 and Orion's 4, because he's used to being around multi-age environments where the older kids lead and the younger kids learn from them, and you're caring for each other in a much more natural way. So I think that's like a perfect example of a system. And I had this vision at one point during that whole experience. I was like, what if we repurposed the school? Because the thing we're missing in America specifically is like gathering places that aren't your home or like the mall, but every community has a school. Right? Every community has a school.
And shopping.
Yeah, exactly.
Bullshit.
So like,
what
if the school became this like community center where you had like in Hawaii we say kupuna, the elders, you had the grandparents coming to teach. They have a feeling of like usefulness and wisdom sharing. You've got other people coming to share whatever they're doing. Kids are there learning, but in a much more fluid environment. You've got like gardens. Like that could become a really central hub of every community.
Yeah,
that'd be super cool.
I'm down.
So that's the kind of stuff where we like repurpose existing infrastructure, but shift the way we think about the system itself. And I think the key thing is to think about like, what are we trying to do with this system? And with education, it's to create beautiful humans who know themselves, in my opinion, who are here to help the world. And so what does that system look like that supports that?
Yeah.
And let's get rid of the one that supports making factory workers, because we don't want that anymore. So
that's great. Yeah. I often reflect about this and talk about it with people. And I talk to myself about it too in the mirror. It's a little weird, but whatever. Don't judge me.
I'm sure it's great.
No, it's great.
Does the mirror talk back?
Yeah, it does.
Perfect.
It has a different voice.
Love it.
Like it talks like this.
Actually, I believe that's true. I'm sure that actually happens.
I totally talk to myself.
I'm going to check with Christine
all the time.
100%. Out loud.
And in different accents.
I believe that.
And it keeps it entertaining for my life.
That's good.
But really what you're talking about and what I'm in total alignment and agreement with what you're saying. And really you're painting a beautiful picture of it is like, it's really, we're going back to basics because that's the way that we used to educate our kids.
Totally.
The kid would spend time with his dad and his grandfather and his cousin and his brother and like,
learn from them
all around, whereas like when I was growing up, man, I saw my dad like never.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
It was so rare. And I'm just
and
with
how
kids.
sad is that? Like,
it's really like reflecting back, and I love my father and he's passed and I miss you, Pop.
Yeah.
And you did the best you could.
Well, and he was stuck in a system that didn't offer anything else.
He was stuck in a system that didn't offer anything else. And also he was robbed of basic educational things that would have been critical to allow him to succeed, not just in business, which he totally thrived because he was a genius and committed, but also in terms of his emotional navigation of his life. You know, my parents got a divorce. That may not have happened. He wasn't, let's be clear. I love my dad and we totally completed on everything. But when I was a kid, he just was not there. Yeah. He was at work all the time. And then when he was there, he didn't know how to relate to me because his relationship with his dad was weird. Yeah. So, if I could do it again, I wouldn't do it differently. But if I could design it for the future generations, I would design it in the way that you're talking about, where there's exposure to different people and different walks of life and different ages so that you're getting a taste of all of these things. And that's also useful to the kids. The older kids get to feed the younger kids. The younger kids surprise the older kids with
it's an ecosystem.
Inspiration. It's its own beautiful thing, especially if people are not bullying each other and being jerks, and that they have that at heart. The other thing that comes to me and I talk about quite a bit is like there should be classes on very specific subjects. I talked to Patch Adams one time. I interviewed him for a documentary project, and he said, he was like, why isn't there a class on love?
Yeah, totally.
There should be a class on love,
forgiveness
in every single grade.
Yeah.
All the time. You can't exhaust talking about love and different forms of love. I don't just mean eros. I mean like agape and amaki and all of the other ones that I'm not mentioning here. And that's really what we need to be reminded of, because that's what we forgot.
Yeah.
And how do we love more? You know, I often talk about the love operating system, asking myself the contextual question of how do I love more in this life? How do I give and receive love more?
Yes.
You know, like an
It's
actively,
so
what
rewarding.
are active examples of that? Oh, okay. Well, I can play archery with your son. You know, that's a way that I can love on him. He can love on me, and we can receive love from each other because I love that kid, you know. To music, how do I love more in the song that I'm creating? How do I love the audience more? How do I receive the applause that they're giving me and not think it's for someone else? You know, which is the thing that a lot of us performers.
And look how much richer life starts to feel when you lean into that.
Yeah. And then processing. Why isn't there a class on processing? There should be a class on forgiveness. You're right.
Totally. There's so many things.
And there should be a class on processing. How do I process my emotions? How do I move through my emotions?
Yes. What are my emotions even?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that, you know, like the kids recently, my daughter recently was like, can we see an emotion wheel? And I was like, totally. Because you don't even know how to name half of them sometimes. Like, what am I feeling? I don't even know what do I call it? What is this? And there's nuance in that you could start to get into. That's so powerful.
Yeah. And it's not, and it's so critically important. It's funny because last night this came up for me. Christina and I, we didn't get in a fight, but it was like she wanted to. This is so dumb. Whatever. I was really tired, and then of course I couldn't sleep. But before I couldn't sleep, I was really tired. And she wanted to
midlife.
She wanted to put the comforter cover back on the comforter. And I was like, dude,
Brady and I each have our own blanket.
And I was like, and that's smart.
Because we don't want to fight over the blankets. And he likes a different kind of blanket than I like. So we just have 2 blankets.
Oh, okay. That's
highly
nice.
recommend it.
Okay. Yeah.
You might want to think about it.
So she wanted to put the comforter cover on, but we're already in bed and I'm super zonked. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And the way that I was talking to her, she was like, God, I really hate it when you talk to me. And the way that I was talking to her was like, I felt like defeated but I wasn't looking at what's the emotion that I'm actually feeling. Instead, I was just kind of a dick.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to be a dick. It just comes naturally.
You don't even have to try.
I don't.
It's great.
But if I can break it down, what I'm learning about myself and life and relationships is like, if I can break it down and look directly at before I react and just say things in the way that I'm going to say them. Yeah. If I look at, what's really going on? Okay. I'm really exhausted right now.
Totally.
The idea of getting out of bed after I get into bed is like, I just don't want to
do it.
You know, I'm under resourced in this moment. Like, and I really just want to feel cozy and safe. And I'm afraid that you're going to take that away by ripping the blanket off of me. Right. But I wasn't thinking that. I just was being a jerk. But if I was more aware of what my emotional states were and like had some education there.
Self-awareness, such a key to peace. Like we need that. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I feel like all of those are great things. And I wish that, you know, in our future, we should, I wish that my dad had that. Yeah. Because if my dad had that and was able to process some of the insanity that happened in his household when he was a kid, because he had to deal with like abuse and also, you know, whatever, witness abuse and really rough stuff.
Yeah.
And if he had some outlets or ways of actually processing that,
he could have chosen
something I could have had a better relationship with him as a kid.
Absolutely.
And I did have a great relationship with him as an adult because I sort of woke up to all of this and took responsibility for my life and brought it to him and was like, this is what I want. Yeah. And so we made that together, but I wish that he would have had that sooner.
Totally. And, you know, it's interesting you bring out that example of your relationship with your father, because I think there's a couple other systems tied into that experience you had that we want to have different for the future too. And one of them being the nuclear family and this sort of like notion, particularly in our culture in America and a lot of other Western cultures, that you were, especially in that time when you were a kid, you're supposed to live in this nuclear family with like a mother, father, and 2 kids or whatever it looks like in a house isolated by yourselves. And I think there wasn't even really outlets to have, like there weren't men's groups he could go to and have conversations about these things.
Way.
There wasn't even, you know, so you're taken out of the village where you had people knew what everybody was up to. And even if you didn't want people in your business, they were. And, the grandpa might come and talk to you like, hey, I've noticed this has been happening with your family. You had supports sort of built into the way we operated. Take that away. It's a very violent experience. So now you're living all by yourself. And then you layer on top of that the work culture and sort of the system of how, capitalism works and business works. And especially then when it was, you went into an office and you had this particular place you went to work and you were out of the house. And so all those things together created this separation, isolation, and no way to process what was going on.
Exactly.
So there goes the relationship.
Yeah.
And then in comes the loneliness, in comes, the alcohol, drug abuse, or whatever it might be, or the emotional abuse or whatever is happening, or the numbing out, whatever way it comes through.
Yeah.
And there we have it, so we're looking to shift all of those because they're all entangled together towards something much more life affirming.
100%.
Yeah.
That, and it's also, that denying ourselves and our society of the ability to process those emotions, which we were designed to experience.
Yes.
Then feeds itself into the psychopathy.
Yeah.
That goes into corporate culture and things like dictatorial rule and like, who gives a shit about anybody else? I got to get mine.
Exactly.
How many more billions of dollars can I accumulate, or
totally.
millions of dollars can I accumulate so that I can buy more toys?
Yeah.
I'm not knocking having money, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't all strive to succeed and like that. And, my dad was very fond of saying money doesn't buy happiness, but it sure helps.
Yeah. And it is true. No, there's a base levels in the system that uses money as a mode of exchange, which, by the way, money is the greatest collective agreement we uphold on the planet every day. Mm-hmm. So it is a system we created that's fabricated out of, whatever we believed in. So it may shift too in the future, but you do need it in this system to have a decent survival experience. And if you're below survival level, then it is going to be really, really hard. So yes, absolutely. But then there's the other extreme where you have so much that it becomes also an isolating mechanism. So I think there's something in between. And what is the purpose of the making of the money? Because it's like, if the making of the money is the purpose itself, that's a real empty place.
It is.
So,
and that's why people that are super rich a lot of times very much are still empty of purpose and sad and not happy, and or just consumed by the greed that got them there, because that's the God that they're worshiping, and that God is empty.
But that could also be at any level of economic success, I think, because if the striving, even if you're working in the blue collar job, but you're doing it because it's for the money, there's still an emptiness. It's like we have to find, it's almost like it doesn't matter what scale, there has to be a purpose in the work. Yeah. There has to be a sense of like, I'm doing this because, and that's where, so many systems I think have to change. And maybe we go to the AI topic, because it could be, that AI comes in and helps us to actually do the things that we love. But again, back to the schooling, this is how they're all entangled, right? In schooling, you're kind of pushed out a lot of times of what you're passionate for, because there isn't even room to explore that. It's like, you've got to learn these set things to get to this next level of life. And then you completely forget what your sole purpose was in the first place, because no one's cultivating that for you. No one's asking the questions or giving you the ways to be curious or try things out to understand what mission you came here for, So there's like they're all entangled together in that way.
Yeah, totally. On this note, I feel like this is very fitting. I'd love for you to read something from your book.
Sure.
It's kind of this sort of in the middle of a chapter. Mm-hmm. But when I read this, by the way, I read this I was reading this in Egypt.
Yes.
When we were in Egypt.
Yes.
So I was writing these questions while I was in Egypt.
I love it.
A lot of them.
That was a great trip.
But I think it's good to just read this one page. I had a note that you should just read this one page. This is page 20 from
Where in My Heart?
Aubrey's book, Our Beloved Futures.
Right. Where in my heart am I still not free? The dark and light play with one another, intertwining like the banyan tree, encompassing all that is with a choking embrace. I once sat with a banyan tree on the edge of the sea for many moons, watching a star sparkle and speak to me. I had yet to learn that she was Venus, my relative, my guide. I was in the darkest night of my soul, drowning in fear, in an attempt to hide from feeling I was weak and scared, and love saved me. The banyan saved me. Venus saved me. I saved me. Feeling is a courageous act. I am here now to tell you that we can feel, that we are meant to feel, that we can practice our way into feeling fully, and that on the other side of that courage is profound joy and deeply abiding peace. That grief is only possible when you love so much, that love is our purpose. Some days I'm unsure and off balance. I don't know how to find the center once more. This is where forgiveness lives. Teetering front to back, finding the center line, finding balance. In a small earthen hut with a soft grass roof, my soul can rest in the dirt and smell earth again. The distance between there and this life is my destiny. There are some who came earthside to restore balance with Gaia. You were magnetized to this reading because you remember this. We bring the unconditional love that knows this true essence and forgives all. You came here with me. You remember this too. How long have you been hiding your wings? It's time now to allow their gossamer shimmer to unfurl in delicious fullness. Allow their weightless loving to beat softly again. It is safe, dear one. You are safe, and you are seen. I bow to your beauty. We are here. Oh.
You got me. I'm crying. If you can't see, if you're watching on YouTube, you see that I'm crying.
That's so sweet.
It's fake. I just put some eye drops in. It's not real.
Oh, I love that that moved you.
Yeah, that's really moving.
Beautiful.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
And it really also points to, it points exactly to what we were talking about in so many ways. And, there's the warrior mentality, which I'm totally all about. I love that. I love knowing how to defend myself. Yeah. I'm into it. I respect soldiers. I come from a long line of warriors. My middle name is Dubois, and that's after my ancestor, who was a general and the Minister of War to Napoleon. So and I recognize that, on all sides of my family, there's been warriors, and I appreciate that, and part of the warrior mentality is being able to deal with whatever comes at you without having to jostle with your emotions, just to be able to be focused. Yeah. I'm going to hunt this ox or whatever. That's a bad example. I'm going to hunt this buffalo. Totally. They move faster. Yeah. I'm not going to get, even though I'm tired and I want to quit and I'm sad because something like that, ignore all that stuff. There's only the buffalo, and I'm only going to focus on the buffalo. How do I get this buffalo? Thinking thoughts, just mind first. And yes, that's absolutely necessary. But at what cost? And I feel like so much of our society has leaned more in that direction. Stay focused. Just use your mind. Figure it out, not using our hearts. Totally. And one of the greatest lessons that I had from Egypt is all of these kings and pharaohs that are walking into these temples. When you see these giant hieroglyphs, they're all walking with their left foot forward. They're all walking with their heart forward. Oh, interesting. I never thought about that. I love that you noticed that. Yeah. So did you mention that when we were there? I don't remember it. Maybe I wasn't there. She talked about it. She mentioned it in the podcast that we did. Cool. And I was That's quite beautiful. Yeah. I'm actually naming my new company Left Foot Forward Media. Love it. I love it. That's so great. So because we always say the right foot forward. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the right foot forward. We always say the right foot forward. We always say that. But the left foot forward is the heart. It's better to feel the emotions and then to think what to do after you fully felt the emotions. Allow yourself to fully feel the emotions, and then once they're felt and they're spent, then think, okay, what should I do? Totally. Now that I've allowed myself to feel this. And I feel like our society has become anti-feeling or anti-emotions in such a big way, which makes no sense. Totally. I mean, we are not robots. No. We are feeling machines. It's why we're here, to be able to do that. It's such a superpower. It really is. Yeah. We wouldn't be designed to feel these emotions if we weren't meant to feel them. Yeah. And same with all beings and animals and those people who don't think animals have emotions. You can stop listening to this shit right now because I don't like you and I think you're deluded. But no, really, it's so important for us to recognize the importance of emotions
Yes,
and really allow ourselves to feel them fully,
totally.
and so that we can learn from them and evolve, you know.
Well, and so much of stuck emotion is what causes, trauma, triggering, sort of, repetition of patterns of abuse in family lines. All of that is from repressed emotions, numbing behaviors.
Yes.
All of that comes from our inability to fully feel because it's too scary. We don't have the tools. We're not schooled again in that culture where we process emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with a mom. One of her favorite phrases was "denial is not just a river in Egypt."
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh, it's a good one.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay,
Mom.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
She was funny. You really would have liked her a lot. She's a big personality, laughing all the time, telling really dirty jokes and all kinds of good stuff.
Great.
Yeah, you would have loved her. But that I realized like, oh, she couldn't go there when it was hard, and so of course I didn't have the capacity or the tools, to think about how to work through hard emotions. And so much of that gets stuck and it clogs our works.
Yeah.
So
it's really fascinating too, because, you bring up like ancestrally, and there are different people who just think it's bullshit. But, our genetics go back 14 generations in truth. And so the experiences and life lived by the people that came before us does get passed down to us. And it gets passed down to us also in the form of disease. People have inherited diseases. Well, where do those diseases come from? Probably some emotional thing that happened back in the day. And
totally.
if you're able to unravel the reason for the disease, the dis-ease, a lot of times you can heal yourself. By accepting what there is beyond that. And that's also scientifically proven in cases. And what you've got, what's that fucking guy's name?
Which one? There's a lot of guys out there.
It'll come.
What does he do? What did he do? Maybe it'll figure it out.
He leads workshops and he's like a super genius. And he's
oh my God, now I'm blanking too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That guy.
Oh my God. I'm blanking on it too. What's his name?
Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza.
Wait,
he's great.
Let's say it at the same time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Joe Dispenza.
Look at our big brains. Remembering things.
We're talking about too many big things. We don't have any more brain cells left.
Yeah. So that guy, is all about, he's all about healing ourselves and figuring out what the emotional cause is.
Yeah.
And the fact that, what you're pointing to, this numbing behavior, alcoholism, et cetera.
Totally.
That's like inherited. Yeah. That does go back far. It's actually really important for us now in this day and age where people are waking up more, being more living. I don't mean woke. Yeah. I mean, living in a more awakened state of consciousness.
Awareness is what you're speaking to, which I think is really a big piece of it. Self-awareness, self-aware, aware of the world.
Yes. A recognition that we are all interbeing, that we are all related, that we are all part of this system, that we're, we're a piece of the forest, if you will. We have a job here.
Drop in the ocean.
Yeah. So it's really important for us to like feel those feelings and heal those things that we need to heal. And you can ignore it and pretend like that's not true. And most people do, and just live your life however you want to live. But there's an opportunity there to really like embrace our emotionality and like feel the feelings fully. You know, when you watch Shawshank Redemption or whatever movie makes you cry, like it feels so good and you want that. But bring it out of the dark movie theater where no one's looking at you and crying, and like be able to express yourself and show your love. It's so interesting that crying has been so demonized in the male culture.
Yes.
Like I cry a lot.
It's great.
And I'll kick your ass if I
totally.
have to. Like
they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Actually, I think you can feel more of both if you allow them all to be true.
That's absolutely right. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to kick your ass, but you know what I mean? Like I'm not, the traditional male thing of like being able to fight or whatever, like, yes, I can do that. And also like, I pride myself on crying because I don't pride myself. I'm not like, I'm going to cry, but I love it when I do cry because it means I'm feeling fully, especially if I'm inspired by something. That's really rich territory.
It almost feels like a stretch. It's like when you feel that, like when you do a good stretch in your body, like when you feel a big emotion, it's like you stretch your emotional body and it feels good. Like an amazing yawn. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. I think too about that, the epigenetics thing, which you're speaking about, and it's like the ancestral patterns when, I feel like the Hoffman process is another really great way that addresses that from a different perspective, which is that these family patterns and ways of being that come about as a strategy to get love, basically is what it is. You come in as like a baby into a family, and literally love is your way of surviving, because you can't do anything for yourself. So you need people to love you or you will die, so you end up in this family pattern, like world of patterns that come from their family's world of patterns come from there, and you can dial it back. So unless somebody's come and broken the chain of behavior, your family is going to be in some way mirroring the ways that the family lineages before them acted. And so you're coming into that. So even if you don't go to like the genetic level, like in the DNA, like the patterns of your family are going to be imprinted upon you. The ways that they show love and affection, the ways that they deal with each other, argue, don't argue, discuss emotions, don't discuss emotions, all that stuff is going to be patterned on you. So it will be repeated. It's like copy paste until you take the self-awareness and the initiative to do something different. Yeah. So
definitely.
It's passed down.
Yeah. And I mean, all of that's really like about living more of an awakened life. And there's something about when you heal something like that, especially if it's an abuse cycle or like a rage cycle or like
not enough,
that's something that
all kinds of stuff.
That's something I've been working on is like, my dad used to get really mad and he would like shake and quake, and it was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. It's the distorted warrior.
And
because it is the warrior, and it's just doesn't have the outlet.
Yeah. And my grandfather was like a Golden Gloves boxer, but he was also, when he would get drunk, he was very abusive, particularly to my grandmother. And my dad witnessed that.
Yeah, totally.
And so like which, we could talk about alcohol and
all the things.
Which you and I both have like had our share of experiences of how that drug is not good for us. Not good.
And it's so socially acceptable. It's a very socially acceptable mode of numbing.
Why?
Yeah. I don't know.
It falls into
That's
the whole
a whole other conversation.
Thing.
Totally.
It falls into the easily suppressible population kind of thing, so that the people who are in control can control us more easily.
Yeah.
And it's
not an awakening kind of plant substance. Yeah.
You could theoretically have a ceremony in which you drank one shot of mezcal, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
And like make
had
it
some
beautiful.
Sort of an interesting experience.
You could maybe. And
it's not consciousness expanding in general.
Yeah. And by the way, like not often, but sometimes I still get drunk.
Yeah. Nice.
Like it's not often, but there's like a container and like a recognition of it. And I'm hanging with these people that I used to hang out with, and they're doing it. And we're going to do it together, and that'll be fun. And then I leave it, but it's not like as a way of being or as a patterning, it's not helpful. Anyway, going back to my grandfather, like, he was that way. Well, my father used to freak out and yell at us, but he never hit anybody.
Yeah. So he broke part of the pattern.
A big part. Then it's down to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm very sweet and nice and stuff like that. But then occasionally if I get really frustrated, I'll grunt and yell and be like, and it's scary.
I'm sure. Totally.
And that's something that I've been like actively working on, not getting into that place, looking at where do I see the warning signs that I might be going there, stopping.
Yep. That's the self-awareness.
Away, leaving the room, leaving.
Yep. That's what my dad used to do, because he similarly grew up in a very abusive environment.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand it as a kid, because he would get angry and then he'd literally get in his VW van and just drive off and be gone for a couple hours. And I was like, what's happening? And I would get really scared at first. Like, is he coming back? Then he'd come back and he'd be okay. And I realized now that was the best he could do with what he had been given.
It's positive processing.
Totally. He's like, I'm not going to be here and be abusive. So I'm going to leave the situation because I know I can't control myself.
Yeah.
And I'll come back when I'm calm. And I was, now I can see that was his way of doing what he could.
Yeah. And there's something that is the point that I really wanted to make is in conquering those patterns, in completing those patterns, there's something so gratifying and peaceful and beautiful.
Yes.
And it's almost like it feels like you're being acknowledged by your family line for healing that piece. And that's definitely very woo-woo. But if these things are inherited genetically and we're healing them, then there's a little woo in there.
And at the end of the day, like for me, it's like, do you feel happier?
Right.
Great. Call it woo, call it whatever you want.
Who gives a shit?
Like, who cares?
Yeah.
If you're happier, having a more joyful life and hurting less people, awesome.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, that's really at the end of the day, like, why are we judging these things?
Yeah.
You know, if they're not harming others, you're living a more joyful, fulfilled life. Great.
Yeah.
Whatever that was. Let's see. And that formula might help somebody else.
Yeah.
Or not, you know, because we're each different. And so we're going to have a different thing we respond to, a different way we think of it. But that's the goal, is to be happy and joyful and in a state of peacefulness.
Yeah. And by the way, I mean, woo aside, the most woo guy I know is Jesus.
Yeah, totally.
You know, love thy enemy.
Yes.
Treat, you know,
who was really,
your
you know,
as yourself.
Was a very nature-based leader, you know,
sure.
Like they would proselytize by the river and barefoot in his tunic, you know, it was like connected to nature, sitting around the fire under the desert sky. You know, I mean, it was very simple teachings about the abundance and joy of being in community and with nature.
Yeah,
really.
Totally. Okay, so off Jesus, we love you, Jesus, and Buddha, and all the saints,
all the
everybody,
ones,
we love
all
you.
the avatars that teach us the way.
Something that you talk about a lot in your book, which I love and think about a lot, is moving on from shame and guilt to the much harder work of accountability and forgiveness.
Yes. Yep.
That's a quote from your book.
Yeah.
From page 43.
Cool. Nice. I'm glad I wrote that.
I'm glad you wrote it too. And, you know, shame and guilt are they're ingrained in a lot of religions that are maybe taught in not the best
Irish
way
Catholic.
that they could be.
Yeah, totally.
The Jews have a lot of shame and guilt.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Muslims are doing, but I bet they do have that too. Because, you know.
Yeah.
Buddhists, not so much. But Buddhism isn't technically a religion. So, because they accept all other religions. They don't care what you believe.
True. Yeah.
Shame and guilt are and they're hiding everywhere. I find more shame and guilt.
Oh my God, totally.
And then I'm like, oh my God, that's totally controlling who I am and how I'm being. There's another layer of, come on, dude. Didn't we deal with this in that ceremony when I barfed my brains out? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. No.
There's always a little more.
Nope, there's more. Or it comes back, or it's still there, or I don't know, there's residual, there's neural peptides.
Patterns run deep.
Yeah. They do.
Yeah.
And you know, it's one of these things that we like do in silence. I'm just going to feel shame and guilty. You know, we're not expressing our emotion, even if it's that. And, you know, framing it into in terms of like moving on from shame and guilt, which are enslaving emotions.
Totally.
And keep us down and restricted, not living in our truth and our, you know, you mentioned soul's purpose, which again, a little woo. Think of it as like just what you really, really, really desire in your heart of hearts, what you really dream big about. That's your purpose.
Yeah.
You know, it keeps us away from that shame and guilt, and then into the harder work of forgiveness and accountability. So let's talk about that. Yeah.
So, I mean, shame and guilt in many ways are just not useful, and they're also really self-centered. So shame and guilt, you know, they're just in many ways, worry I'd throw in there too, that they're not useful emotions. They actually don't help you or anyone else. And so in that way, they're very quite self-centered. Because you end up sort of in like the shame spiral, the victim spiral, the guilt spiral. It's within, and it's not doing anything useful for the situation or the world. So it's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy, and it's actually, you know, not allowing you to be in your fullness. And so accountability in these other, what did I say? Forgiveness and accountability. Yeah. So self-forgiveness is also, it's a much higher path of integrity, because you're actually trying to do something to fix the situation for which you felt said shame or guilt, right?
Yes.
Instead of just sitting there and wallowing in this like feeling of shame and guilt, which tends to isolate you, you start to hide, you're not actually out there because you're feeling these feelings that, you know, create an aloneness versus, you know, taking responsibility, using each opportunity as something to learn from, forgiving yourself, you know, whether or not it's about forgiveness of the other, because that's a whole nother conversation we can have about what forgiveness really is and integrity and forgiveness. But accountability, I think, is so important. And that's a self-awareness. You can't have accountability if you don't have the awareness of like who you are, what you did, how you affect others. I remember starting to think about this a lot when I was deep in my political science studies and just learning about, you know, the world that we live in and sort of the political realities of, you know, modern empire and imperialism and colonialism and all these things, and just sort of the histories of that. and really getting to understand that, the stuff we see today that's happening on the world stage has these like deep histories of accountability. And that when we're not acknowledging that too, we only see the symptom of the moment. We're actually missing the whole point, right? So I think we do that personally as well. We start to forget that there's a whole history here. And if we can take accountability for how we're showing up, like your example of the bed sheets, or the comforter. It's like you paused for a moment, maybe after it happened.
Yeah.
And you took accountability for what actually happened. Yeah. But you did, you went back and you had enough self-awareness.
Yeah.
You didn't get you stuck in, she maybe got upset at you. You could have gone into like guilt and shame, which then would have been masked by this like resentment that goes on top of it.
Yes.
And you could have just got stuck in that spiral and just like sulked all night. Instead, you paused and went, okay, like, what did I do here?
Yeah.
What's the pattern? You took responsibility. You were accountable to what you did. You forgave yourself for it because you're like, yep, that sucks. I did that. Oh, well, let's move on and let's heal it. A whole nother outcome becomes available, you know? So I think that's really what that's about.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting because, you say like the much harder work of forgiveness and accountability. And to me, it's like, it's seemingly harder. But what's really harder, the hardest thing is being stuck in a shame spiral and being stuck in a victim mentality. Like it's you don't recognize it until you allow yourself to get out of it. And sometimes you'll get out of it by escaping it, but then you just come back to it. But if you get out of it by actually doing the work to what you just said, forgive the thing that you felt shame about, and also be accountable and do the steps necessary in order to get forgiveness from the other person if that's necessary. Yeah. Like move the ball forward.
Totally. We're just not trained that way in our society. I think that's why it's harder. So it's easier to fall into because it's just what we know.
But it's an easier way of living to live from a place.
And once you start doing it, it becomes much easier. Yeah. Once you start to do that more and more, because then there's actually, you start to clear out the old stuff and the patterns become the response time's quicker. You catch yourself faster. The trigger lasts shorter. Like all of it starts to change. Yeah. But it's like anything, like getting a plane off the ground. The hardest part is the takeoff, right? So that first bit when you pull yourself out of these patterns that are so deep, that are ancestral, that you didn't even know you were doing, it can feel like a sluggish beginning, but then it starts to take off.
Yeah. And it also seems easier to numb it out.
Yeah.
But that's actually way harder too.
100%. Because it's going to blow up in your face.
Worse.
Exactly.
Back to alcohol.
Yes.
I mean,
it's social media. It can be food. Yeah. There's so many different addictions we have. All kinds of things. Addictions to drama. There's people that just create chaos and drama because they want to feel and don't know how. And, so they're constantly creating all kinds of dramatic experiences. And that's not fun to be around either.
No.
So.
No, I'm glad we're not like that.
Yes, me too.
It's good.
Yeah, really worked hard to not have too much drama in my life.
So we're getting a little close to our close.
Yeah.
Well, I did want to just talk a little bit about you talk about Wetiko and the thievery of attention that we're experiencing. And the frequency of peace, the transformation of daemon into guiding spirit, self-forgiveness, and excavation of fears. And I wonder, it'd be great if you could just talk a little bit about that. Sure. What is Wetiko and what are we?
Yeah, so Wetiko is how I've heard it pronounced. Oh. It's an Algonquin word, but it actually
Wetiko. Okay.
Yeah, or Wetiko. Yeah, it's several indigenous cultures have a similar concept, if not the same word. And it's basically this idea of someone who's gone, like it would happen, say, in like a, far north culture, if someone would go out hunting and get stuck in the snow and come back and be sort of crazed, they'd have this like crazedness to them. They could no longer fit in the society. It was this like this cannibalism of the spirit that came through. And when the white people came, colonists came, they named the Wetiko as the white man's sort of disease, because they would come and just like extract and take and kill and all these things. And it was like, what is this insatiable hunger that's within these beings that they couldn't understand, because it wasn't the way that they lived. It wasn't the communal way of thinking about what, you taking what you need. You think about the 42 ideals of Ma'at, these ideals that we hold of like not taking too much, not destroying the world around you. So Wetiko for me really represents that theme of this deep operating system of domination and extraction that then permeates up into all the levels of society today. And we see it acting out on the world stage, but we also see it within ourselves. So we've talked a lot about, these different patterns within the self. And so we may have done like a lot of self work, but it's still in there because it's so deeply woven into our culture and our way of being. You'll find that you are extracting from people all the time without meaning to. Manipulation is another way it pops up. So it might be these small, I call them like micro violences that aren't really overt. You know, you're like, I'm a good person. I don't beat anybody up. And yet there are still these ways in which we're showing up that isn't fully in alignment with our highest self. So it's about getting in touch with that and starting to get back to the accountability, really clear and, you know, self-aware, so you can start to excavate. You know, I talk about like lovingly scooping them out of your being, because again, it's not about shame and guilt. It's about seeing like, oh, I did that thing again in this really small way or this big way. Okay, now I can see it. Now I don't want to do that again next time. And it becomes a new pattern that we're building as a society that's allowing something else to come through.
Beautiful.
So yeah, that's really what
great.
that is.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny too, the self-help, self-healing path, you know, I just find that it's never ending.
Yeah.
You know, there's some idea that you're going to get someplace where, and maybe there is, I don't know. You know,
well, I
I'm
think
still
that's when
looking
you
for
die.
that.
You know, it's like if you like achieve all of that, because we're here to learn. We're in these like learning machines. You know, but I also think something to be aware of in like the self-help or healing world and the spiritual world is, again, like healing for what? You know, are you healing just so you can feel good just in yourself, or is it also in service to the whole?
Right.
And I think that's another part of the shift that's really important to name, is that this is all for the greater healing of a collective, understanding the interbeing of us being woven in this web of life.
Yeah. That
we're not individual. We actually are collective always, you know, from the biology of our bellies to the whole world. You know, it's like we're all connected. And that's where true joy and lasting peace is going to come, is when we live from a place of understanding that. And acting from that understanding.
Otherwise, it's just spiritual bypass.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and you could be, you know, doing all kinds of harm, but really enlightened from within, quote unquote.
Right.
But it's not actually real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to think that maybe there's a Christic consciousness, or, you know, fully enlightened Buddhist consciousness that exists, that perhaps I may get to one day at some point. I don't know when.
Yeah.
What I find currently is just that it's just a constant journey of self-discovery. And the more I dig, the more I find.
Yeah.
And then there's more to deal with. And half the time I'm like, I thought I'd handled that.
There it is again.
Okay.
But how great. Right. We get to keep learning for the rest of our lives.
But then also it's like,
know?
And there's a greater level, as you say, like you're working that muscle of forgiveness. And so it's easier for me to forgive and move past it. Oh, I fell again. Okay, well, get up.
The cycle comes faster. It starts to get more like, oh, okay, got it. Boom, boom, done. Moving on.
Let's
back
go.
to feeling good.
Back to the fun things.
Yeah.
Loving things.
Exactly.
One of my favorite things that you say in your book is, when you find yourself in darkness, you get to decide whether you've been buried or planted.
Yes.
And I love that idea.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. It came from a quote from the Zapatistas. It says, they tried to bury us and they didn't realize we were seeds. So this idea of, you know, like darkness, we've sort of demonized, right? The dark, or it's, you know, the shadow work, all this stuff, afraid of the dark. But actually it's a very fertile place. You know, it's the womb of creation. It's the birthplace of all things, is the darkness, in that all potential exists, right? So really understanding that. And there's like so many levels. So there's that piece of it. It's like the darkness is where everything exists. And then there's the idea that, you know, sometimes you don't see change happening, but it's happening beneath the surface. And so allowing yourself to know that it may seem darker in the shadow, but actually there's like all this work you've done that's going to sprout up, because you've been planted. You're not buried.
Yeah. You're
actually in the muck. You're in the mud. You're in the whatever that is, that dark place, dark night of the soul, because there's going to be so much that comes from it that sprouts up in the spring. So yeah, it's really about that.
And making the choice to see it as that.
Exactly.
Are you buried or are you planted?
Because again, if you're buried, then you're in the shame guilt spiral. If you're planted, you're actually like, okay, I need to be here in this warm, dark place to get the nutrients that are needed, to learn the lessons that are being given to me, so that something else can come through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things with your book, and also just with my audience and myself, you know, there's so much powerlessness that, you know, we feel here. And even those of us who are, you know, people who are listening to this podcast are arguably on this path of awakening and wanting to awaken more and be more alive. And feel more connected and have a sense of God and spirituality in their own way, and yet there is such a feeling of like powerlessness and like, okay, I'm doing all this inner work, but how is that affecting what's going on in Iran right now, et cetera? Like, how does me doing my inner work and ending the war within, as the Buddha would say, end the war out there? Like what difference does it make?
Yeah.
It does. And so let's hear the bridge of that gap.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's everything, and it's like, we don't see ourselves as powerful as we are, but all of us are one, drop in that ocean. And so as each one changes, it starts to create that ripple effect. So, I mean, it is the only thing you can control. So it's kind of like, that's it. That's what we got. The rest of it is happening around us and for us. And so if we can control that piece within, it really does start to change the world. I mean, that for me was what helped me get out of my dark night of the soul, because I did feel as if I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. Like, I'm supposed to change everything, which is a very big hubris. Like, who am I to change everything?
Yeah.
And when I realized, like, I thought that was a humble position. Like, oh, I'm a servant of the world. I'm here to help. I must change everything. I was like, wow, I must really think something of myself if I think I can change everything. And meanwhile, my life was falling apart because it's way too much pressure on a person.
Yeah.
But we're all in it together. And if you do start to change yourself within, the ripple effects. Do you know David Hawkins' work?
A little bit.
Pretty amazing, where he works on, the sort of like resonance field of different being states. And he used kinesiology to test all of this very scientifically over many years. But he basically maps out consciousness and different levels of consciousness and their resonance field and how they affect other people. And so something like living in, anger or whatever would be like a 70. And then if you're living at the state of love, like the frequency of love, it's like a 400. And then like the great avatars, the highest you could ever measure was like the Jesus and the Buddhas was at 1,000. But he said for one person operating at the level 400, I think it's something like you affect 700,000 people on the planet.
Wow.
And then at 1,000, it's like you're affecting millions. Yeah. So there is a way in which our frequency does affect the people around us. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, and even it can be your close family, but it's also like you're walking through the TSA line. And if you're like vibing at a high frequency, people are going to feel good. It's like, it just does. So it absolutely does make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think the way we start to recognize that is, again, not healing in isolation, but healing in community.
Yeah.
Because then you're seeing the effect of your healed being on other beings that are healed or healing, and it all starts to up level and reinforce.
Yeah.
It's reinforcing feedback loops.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's the only thing you can control. So
it is.
Start there.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Yeah. I love brightening people's day.
Yeah.
Like, I love talking to the TSA guy and like
kindness is awesome.
Smiling at people and getting them to smile back. And it's like I love people in general. So like that's easy for me. But also I recognize the gift that it is that I'm giving to them, that then they're giving back to me, that then they're going to give to somebody else. And it's like,
and you never know how far that can go
or
what that might do. That might be the one thing that just really changed someone's day, that changed their week, that changed their month, that changed their life in some way, because we just don't know.
That's right.
And we have to be okay with that not knowingness. I think we're in a real, like, one of the problems with social media is fame culture. It's like we need the likes, we need the like recognition, we need the number of followers. And if we don't have enough, and I'm totally guilty of this too, it's like if you don't have enough, you're like, I'm not doing enough. And it's like, that's so not true. We've got to remember that these effects are outsized, the ripples we can't see and may never know about. And that's got to be sufficient.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, it's funny that the whole Messiah complex, I hear you. And a lot of us feel that way, that we all have to fix it. But really it is about doing the inner work that has us raised to a higher frequency and just be more of service.
Yeah.
To me, that's fundamentally the purpose.
Yes.
Of
service
life.
Feels good.
It does.
And we forget that because we're in such an individualized culture that tells you to compete and get ahead and compete for resources. But service feels really good.
Yeah. The cycle of reciprocity, which was another huge theme in Egypt and all of the hieroglyphs that we looked at. There's a reciprocal thing that's happening.
Absolutely.
That light just went out.
Yeah, it did.
I'm not going to turn that light back on, people. All right. You just can't see me slightly darker right now. Sorry.
It's not me.
Sorry, people who's editing this. Okay, great. So I asked this question of all of my guests.
Great. I'm excited. What is it?
For you, Aubrey Morgan Yee.
Yes.
What is sacred and what is insane?
What is sacred and insane?
What is sacred and what is insane?
Insane.
Insane.
Okay. Interesting. I've never heard those two paired like that. I like it. Sacred and profane, I guess I'm more used to. But gosh, sacred is everything. I do believe. I mean, I think everything is sacred. And maybe if I had to, gosh, if I'd have to, I don't even know if I want to pick a thing. I just think everything is sacred. I think when we really, lean into the everything is sacred, we start actually being present in our lives. Because then the thing that we thought was like, a drudge or a bear, or like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do that. When you see it as sacred, suddenly your life just lights up in a totally different way.
Mm-hmm.
And what is insane is the world we live in right now. Like, I am just like every day, like, wow, the absurdity of what we're in right now. And when you really start to, I think one of the fun things is when you get into thinking about the world, more self-awareness, more noticing, you can see the absurdity of where we're at. It almost starts to become funny because it's like so absurd the way we've designed things. So that, to me, like the dominant culture that is wrapping the planet in this moment is insane. And so, doing something different is actually quite a sane response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Amazing.
Yeah.
How do people find you? Where can they find your book?
Totally.
Where can they listen to your podcast?
Yep, for sure. Beloved Futures podcast is on all the podcast platforms.
Awesome.
Ourbelovedfutures.com, OUR, belovedfutures.com is my website.
Okay.
Aubrey Morgan Yee, aubrey.morgan.yee is my Instagram, and also Our Beloved Futures, 2 different Instagrams. And then the book is available all over the place. So if you are an Amazon person, you want to do bookshop.org, you can get it there. Amazon has it. There's an audiobook if you liked listening to me read it.
Do you read it? Ooh, I like that. Your reading was fantastic.
Really, really fun reading it. It was pretty amazing. I actually had this download when I was finishing the book. My godfather was dying of cancer and I was in ceremony and I had this whole like realization that the book was meant to be read out loud, that there was something in the frequency of the words that was going to transmit even a different experience. So
yeah, you made me cry.
Yeah, I started reading it to him and his, as he was in hospice, and I would send him little chunks. And then I did like a whole professional audiobook at the end, but it was really fun to do. So that's, the audiobook, the Kindle book, the regular book.
Okay.
Just get it out there.
All the things.
Yeah, may it serve. It's really the idea.
Yeah, well, it definitely served me. I really, really enjoyed it. And
amazing.
It expanded my mind and my heart.
Yeah, and thank you for reading it so deeply and coming with so many thoughtful questions. And it's been a really enjoyable time. I appreciate you so much. I'm so glad
likewise.
Our families are woven now.
Yes. And I want to acknowledge you for all the work that you've done and getting this book out there and all the ways that you envision futures in a positive way where we really rise up to our potential.
Yes, that's
and
the
recognize
idea.
our inner being and recognize the field of abundance that we live in and let go of scarcity and fear and live in a love-based operating system.
Yes, all that's possible.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. And thanks for raising such great kids.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if you ever have the pleasure of meeting her children, they're amazing people. All right.
Awesome.
If you want to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/lunacy podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. We love you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Be well.